Well, hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today as we get into the Word to make sure the Word gets into us. And today's text is one of those interesting texts of here's God in His sovereignty utilizing a pagan seer, I guess we can call Balaam a seer, to then bring about a curse in one sense against the enemy, Balak, the king of Moab, who is, ironically, trying to get a curse announced on Israel. Talk about a little bit convoluted here, but it's just a reminder that God in His sovereignty can utilize anyone He so chooses to bring about His ultimate desired outcome. And it's fascinating because I want to read chapter 24, verses 12 through 14, and then we'll talk a little bit about the whole story in regards to Balaam and Balak here. So Balaam answered Balak, that's the king of Moab. Didn't I previously tell the messengers who sent me, if Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go against the Lord's command, to do anything good or bad of my own will. I will say whatever the Lord says. Now I'm going back to my people, but first let me warn you what these people will do to your people in the future. So here we go. Balaam is just Balak. If you look at the verses prior to this, Balak says, I brought you here to curse Israel, and now 3 different times you have blessed them. I'm not going to give you any reward because you haven't even done what I asked you to do. You've done the opposite of what I've asked you to do. And it kind of reminds me of what Joseph said to his brother. He said, you intended this for evil, meaning selling him into slavery, but God has purposed it for good to bring about the saving of all these people. So here in this case, Balak, he appealed to Balaam through 2 different convoys, the second of which had higher ranking officials and more resources. And he said, hey, come and announce a curse. Balaam on his part, you have to give him credit, told Balak, look, I can't go if the Lord won't let me go, and I can only say what He tells me to say if He allows me to go. Of course, we have Balaam's donkey and all that experience there. Here's Balaam, and he comes in 3 different times. Balak, he positions him, and he says, okay, announce your curse. Well, Balaam blesses. Balak says, what are you doing? So he repositions him. He says, okay, announce your curse. Balaam blesses because that's what God commands him to say. Balak says, let me position you one more time. Surely this time you'll curse my enemies. Balaam blesses, and Balak is irate. He says, go home. And I'm not going to send you home with anything. Get out of here. Well, Balaam now in the verse we just read says, hey, don't you remember what I told you? I told your convoy that it doesn't matter if you gave me your house full of silver and gold. The only thing I could announce on Israel was exactly what God told me to announce. And it all comes in this culminating last prophecy in verses 15 and following, where he basically says, your destruction is imminent. It's going to happen. God is going to raise up a warrior. God's going to raise up a king. And of course, there are messianic undertones to this. Whether it was that Christ would ultimately be the one to destroy, or that there would be one in that line. But there's some messianic undertones here, obviously. But the end result is that, hey, Balak, you appealed to me and you hired me to announce curses against Israel, but God has, through me, announced blessings. Now here's the curse going to come to you, and not just you. He goes on to announce several more: Amalek, the Kenites, also several others. Announcing that God's hand is with Israel. He will indeed prosper them, and they will be successful. They will multiply greatly, and they will be the influential force in this area. But like I said, it's a reminder that when God has determined His sovereign purpose, He'll bring it about in whatever way He so chooses, even if it's using a pagan seer or a pagan king that was trying to bring evil against His people. God, used through both of them, brought about good. And it's a reminder to us that God is faithful. And oftentimes we don't see Him working, or we don't perceive the way He's working, or we're not in agreement with how He's working. That doesn't matter. God is faithful to His word, and He's faithful to His promise, and He's doing exactly with Israel what He said He would do, even through a pagan seer or king. Well, friends, I hope these verses are encouraging to you, because He's also going to use a donkey. So there you go. If God can use a donkey, He can use anybody to bring about His will. And I hope it's a reminder to us that God has chosen us, as, number 1, to save us, and number 2, to commission us to His purpose. And so regardless of what skill set you have, regardless of what talents and gifts you think you have or you don't have, or how inadequate you may feel in regards to the task to which God's called you, don't let all those things distract you, and certainly don't let them, in any way convince you can't do them. Trust God, submit to His will, which a pagan philosopher, seer did that, and then experience the amazing blessing of being used by God to accomplish His purpose in your life today. Enjoy His rest, delight in the peace that He brings to us, and then go out determined to live sent.